Sudan says that forces of darkness linked to the ousted President Omar al-Bashir were behind Tuesday's failed coup attempt. Prime Minister Abdalla Hamdok said that remnants from the previous regime were intent on aborting the civilian democratic transition. He described the incident as an orchestrated coup attempt. Bashir, who had been in power for 3 decades, was toppled 2 years ago. The current administration, involving the military, civilian representatives and protest groups, was then established as part of a power-sharing agreement. For some analysis on what these latest developments mean, I'm now joined by Dr. Madut, who's a professor of citizenship and public affairs at Syracuse University in New York State in America. Thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to be here. Wonderful to see you again, Peter.
I would not have thought it possible that after Omar al-Bashir was taken into custody that we would be talking about coup attempts in Sudan. Did it take you by surprise?
Me personally, no. It did not surprise me at all that we would be reporting and talking again about al-Bashir, even though he's behind bars just across the river from where the attempted coup is reported to have taken place today. The announcement from the state media today, especially from the spokesperson, gentleman by name Hamza Balul, was that there has been an attempted coup in Khartoum, and that the people who were behind these, and some of whom have been arrested, were decidedly and definitely people who are loyal to the ousted dictator, Omar al-Bashir. And so it does not surprise me that this is the case, because it is taking exactly the same pattern that other similar attempts in the history of Sudan have taken. The main bridges into the city center are closed because, you know, Khartoum is a tripartite city with Omdurman, Khartoum proper, and then Bahri or Khartoum North. And so the bridges are closed down. There is heavy deployment around the state broadcasting corporation in Omdurman. And this is quite fitting the form that similar attempts have taken over the last 60 to 70 years since Sudan became independent. The question then is, who is behind this attempted coup? You will recall that the Sudanese people have distinguished themselves since 1964 for their penchant and capacity to oust dictatorships. They did this in 1964, they did it again in 1985, they did it again in 2019 with al-Bashir. But all along, as they do this, the defining factor in the success of these popular uprisings and their ability to oust long-term dictatorships has been the role of the military, i.e. the security forces taking the sides of the civilian protesters. So all along, it may be called a civilian protest, but its ability to actually hold the ground and oust the leadership has always relied on the military taking the side of the protesters. Sudan has a particularly unique way of doing things in this regard that Africa perhaps could have learned or could still learn a lesson from. Africa is known to be the place where all these military coups take place. There was just one not long ago in Guinea on the West African coast, There are rumors going on of similar processes going on in many other African countries. But one thing that the Sudanese people have taught us is that the civilians are capable of ousting military juntas, military dictators, without too much bloodshed. But what remains is that they always rely on the military joining their side. And when the military is joining their side, it always leaves this inkling in all of us who watch Sudan that if the military is so capable of siding with the civilians and ousting the dictator, what is it that prevents the military from turning against this very civilian and returning back a dictator or another? And I think this is what has happened today, where al-Bashir, to the applause of the whole world, was ousted in 2019, but remained with tentacles, with fingers and toes in the new structure that was brought upon by the civilian revolution, such that you have in the palace a junta. Some of them, like somebody called Hameti, was the Bashir ally. Burhan, the head of the military council, was an ally of Bashir. They are remaining there. So a lot of Sudanese people have always been suspicious that al-Bashir may be behind bars as we speak, but we are not completely certain that he is totally gone until we see him being tried in The Hague, which a lot of Sudanese people have been calling for. So I don't know whether this is definitely a return of al-Bashir or whether this is now a final nail on the coffin of the military dictatorship, now that he has revealed himself to still have remnants within the army. That is still going to be seen in the near future, in the next day or two.
All right.
But the fact is that the attempted coup has failed, as now the government led by military council and the civilian government led by Dr. Hamdok, the prime minister, are saying that they have thwarted the coup and that they have arrested the people behind it. But as we are talking today, I just got news that the military headquarters in Khartoum is in a place called Al-Shajara, just south of the city of Khartoum. Al-Shajara is where all the artillery, the tanks, the military gadgets, that's where they are located. And we are hearing that even as the government of Prime Minister Hamdok is announcing defeat of the coup, we are getting reports that actually the military headquarters in Al-Shajara is still holding out, saying that they are not going to go until the current government is gone. And we fear that the regime, the former regime's allies, may still have a sway on the army that is capable of returning this person back to power, which would be completely ominous, not just to the Sudanese people, but to Africans as in general, as a result of military people always.
So I guess what you're saying is that the closer the country gets to these democratic reforms, perhaps the more desperate some of these elements might become. And all of this happening at a time that President Joe Biden was pointing to Sudan's democracy. Let's just listen to what President Biden said about Sudan today.
As we steer our nations toward this inflection point and work to meet today's fast-moving, cross-cutting challenges, let me be clear. I am not agnostic about the future we want for the world. The future will belong to those who embrace human dignity, not trample it. The future will belong to those who unleash the potential of their people, not those who stifle it. The future will belong to those who give their people the ability to breathe free, not those who seek to suffocate their people with an iron hand. Authoritarianism, the authoritarianism of the world, may seek to proclaim the end of the age of democracy, but they're wrong. The truth is The democratic world is everywhere. It lives in the anti-corruption activists, the human rights defenders, the journalists, the peace protesters. On the front lines of this struggle in Belarus, Burma, Syria, Cuba, Venezuela, and everywhere in between. It lives in the brave women of Sudan who withstood violence and oppression to push a genocidal dictator from power and who keep working every day to defend their democratic progress. It lives in the proud Moldovans who helped deliver a landslide victory for the forces of democracy with a mandate to fight graft, to build a more inclusive economy. It lives in the young people of Zambia who harnessed the power of their vote for the first time, turning out in record numbers to denounce corruption and chart a new path for their country. And while no democracy is perfect, including the United States, we'll continue to struggle to live up to the highest ideals to heal our divisions. And we face down violence and insurrection. Democracy remains the best tool we have to unleash our full human potential.
All right, so that's President Joe Biden there, and pointing to how the Sudanese fought for their democracy. And perhaps as we wrap up this conversation, it's still not secure. The Sovereign Council that's supposed to be building this new democracy has struggles even within its own gathering. As brief as you can, if you could just outline some of the stumbling blocks to get the project done and what needs to be done.
Okay, well, as amazing as it is for President Joe Biden to applaud the capacities of various African people to get democracy, unfortunately, it is very difficult for some of us who know America and know Africa to stomach the U.S. mantra being the yardstick for measuring the success of African people to get democracy. But that said, I can say that the Sudanese people surely have made major strides in ousting the dictator, in trying to institute governmental institutions and systems that protect people, that ensure democratic processes. There's no question about Sudanese people having led Africa in these processes. But where are the processes that hamstring them in terms of their success and sail towards democracy? One of them is the fact that Sudan and many other African countries and North African countries and Middle Eastern countries are still subject to new colonial processes. Sadly, that is the case. In Sudan, the main issue now is that the dictatorship, which was ousted successfully by the Sudanese people, is still able to rear its head through some of the people who have been installed within the system itself, within the government itself in Khartoum. And this, to the suspicion of the Sudanese people all along, over the last 2 years, the government that was set up as a result of the revolution is not a government that can vouch successfully to have severed its relationship with that Islamic movement.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I think we're going to have another conversation just on that last part. But thank you so much indeed for your update today. Thank you.